Hi, I'm Chris Green, the History Chap, telling the forgotten stories from British history. In the dry, unforgiving landscape of British Somaliland in August 1913, a young British officer rode out at the head of a camel-mounted force. His name was Richard Caulfield. What followed would become one of the most disastrous episodes in the British Empire's 20-year campaign against a man that they called the Mad Mullah. British Somaliland was a narrow strip of land on the northern coast of the Horn of Africa, bordering the Gulf of Aden. Today it's part of modern-day Somalia. Since the 1830s, when they'd seized Aden on the Arabian Peninsula, the British had controlled the narrow waterway from the Indian Ocean into the Red Sea and the Suez Canal beyond. However, the French establishing their colony of French Somaliland in 1884 and the Italians establishing a presence in the Horn of Africa with both their colonies of Italian Somaliland and Eritrea the following year, that dominance of the vital shipping lane was under threat. And thus, as much to deny the coastline of northern Somalia to her rivals as for any imperial grand designs, the British established their own presence in the region. In 1888, the Protectorate of British Somaliland was established. At 68,000 square miles, or 176,000 square kilometres, it was half the size of England, but with a population of just 155,000. It was one of those additions to the British Empire which provided the imperial power with no mineral or agricultural riches. Its sole purpose was to prevent others controlling the African side of the Gulf of Aden, principally centred around the port of Berbera. And yet, to control that coastal strip, they needed to create a buffer zone inland too. However, in that vast, arid hinterland, their influence was shallow. Beyond their strategic control on the coast, British Somaliland was, to all intents and purposes, left to its own devices, run by a variety of feudal tribes and clans. And as long as their rivalries didn't destabilise the British control of the coast, all was well. However, one man refused to accept this status quo, or the presence of the British. Muhammad Abdullah Hassan, a poet, scholar and devout Sufi Muslim, had returned from studying in Mecca with a zealous desire to purify Somali Islam. Drawing inspiration from the Mahdi in Sudan, he rejected colonial interference in the Horn of Africa. Gathering his supporters at the town of Bureo in the spring of 1899, he sent the British a letter which essentially declared war on the colonial regime. His struggle with the British would last over 20 years.